That was race 1. Now to race 2. American Magic are back in the game.
Well, New York Yacht Club's American Magic is a collaboration between high-powered private backing and the New York Yacht Club, certainly giving them all the makings of a power squad. Terry Hutchinson's got the reins and immediately tabbed his old friend and 2007 Afterguard partner Dean Barker to drive Patriot. Barker has plenty of experience in the pressure seat, driving either a Challenger or a Defender in 6 of the last 7 Cup cycles.
And it's the old rivals of Britannia, the British Challenge. Rita, the name of Sir Ben Ainsley's Olympic yachts, emblazoned on the side of that magnificent hull. Here is the British Challenge.
INEOS Team UK is a new team led and backed by INEOS founder and chairman Sir Jim Ratcliffe. Sir Ben Ainsley, a previous America's Cup winner and the most successful Olympic sailor of all time, is the principal and skipper, and he's back for another attempt to win this elusive trophy. It goes without saying that this team is in good hands. Ben has his focus on something even bigger now.
And the start is underway. INEOS Team UK, American Magic, and they are good to go across the line in race 2 of the America's Cup World Series.
Timing a little off between, we're practicing too here in television world. These guys are off. And it looked like a pretty even start, and Patriot kind of sneaks out to a little bit of a weather advantage. Nathan, the edge of this race course comes up really fast.
Yeah, you're hitting this boundary within 30-40 seconds of the gun, and that leeward position's a tricky one to be in. You're instantly getting pinned against the boundary there, and American Magic he's setting up for attack right on the boundary.
That was the voice of Richard Slater, who's the chief umpire. So through that starting sequence, there must have been a couple penalties, and maybe at some stage here we can bring in Richard and he can let us know what those penalties were and what they were for.
Penalty still on here, Ben? Yeah, I can see that. Copy. Say again, umpire. Clear. Clear. Okay, coming on the breeze.
So confirmation that the penalty received in the pre-start by Britannia has been cleared, and it's a clean racing.
Okay,
surely furious start.
Well, until about 2 minutes to that start, Stephen, INEOS Team UK was not going to take part in the race. They have a problem with their foil control system, but just managed to sort it out enough to cross the line and get going. I don't know what kind of shape they're in, if it's fixed and ready to go, but they're getting around the course.
Bit squirrely going on that one, Will. That board. You're on. Yeah.
2, 1, 1 down.
So let's just confirm what that penalty was. Let's go to Chief Umpire Richard Slater. There's the new part of taking you places you've never been before. Richard, what was the penalty on INEOS?
We actually had 2 penalties. We had INEOS was outside the boundary when we were racing, as in 2 minutes before the start. And the second penalty was they're meant to come in from above the line and cross the start line, and they failed to do so. So we ended up with 2 penalties.
Thank you, mate. Australian gold or canary yellow, those T-shirts?
Australian gold, my friend.
Thank you, bud. We look forward to talking to you throughout this 36th America's Cup. Thanks, bud.
No worries. See ya.
Less likely now, more likely 2 in it.
Copy. Time here. Yeah, it's getting live, but then rebuilding.
Open track.
Looks like the Americans here have a very comfortable lead on the first beat and are in control of this race. They're effectively dead upwind of them here, sending the dirty air that's coming off the sails off them, slowing them down and in full control at this point in time.
My wheel. My roll.
Almost a 300-metre lead of American Magic on INEOS Team UK. As you heard from Shirley, our eyes on the water, that a foil count-out mission prior to the start, but they have got that sort. And there you can see Dean Barker on his home waters. How crazy is that? On his home waters in an American boat as he goes behind the mainsail.
Yeah, behind the mainsail. We saw Peter Burling go in front of the mast during all of his maneuvers. Everybody's got a different way of doing it, and listen, none of them are right or wrong at this stage. It's just a little bit of different and how they figure it out. You know, it's going to be a tough one here, Nathan, to figure out if this is a inherent speed issue from INEOS, a wind shift issue, or if this is a real mechanical issue, and that's the reason why they're so far behind right now.
Well, it's one thing to really, you know, prepare yourself for a practice race, but when you've got systems on your boat not working properly, we heard that might not have even been able to start that race, to get your head back into the game and race again. I've been there before, it's tough, and for all we know, that boat might not be even functioning correctly as it is right now.
Right.
Okay. Happy.
On board, INEOS Team UK, the British challenge, looking and hoping to be those first ones to win the America's Cup. American Magic approaching the top gate for the first time.
You heard Dean Barker just say, "I'll stay here, Goody." He didn't even switch sides, and he's driving around this mark from the leeward side of the race boat.
Here we go.
It is like driving a car when you watch these helmsmen do what they do, these 75-foot, 6.5-ton yachts, isn't it?
G-forces of high 40s, you know, in knots going around those marks. Just got to be something special for these guys to get used to.
35 to boundary.
Did you see that wheel shaking in his hand as he went round? That shows you how on edge these boats are.
INEOS Team UK, held by Sir Ben Ainsley, one of the most decorated Olympic sailors
your pitch
at the helm. He's also the boss, basically, of this campaign, and they are desperate to try and bring the cup back home. Remember, go 1851, Isle of Wight, Great Britain against America.
Here we go.
This is a classic. This is a classic yacht race, but they are trailing. They get around the top gate comfortably and get on the downward leg. Remember, 3 laps, 3 times up and down the course.
Anytime from now.
One thing that's very noticeable is they're flying higher and lower, kind of a little bit, much more pitchy fore and aft. Their ride height just doesn't seem to be what the other boats are at this stage.
No, it definitely doesn't look as sable, and one thing we've noticed is they often leave that windward foil down longer on the exit of manoeuvres. See, they're a little touched down, and the reason why they're probably leaving that foil down longer is just to keep the stability in the platform. When both boards are in the water, it makes the boat wider, you kind of use it for stability, and when you're comfortable that you've got the power back in the boat, you can lift the foil up again. But Shirley, from on the water, is it still very puffy out there? It looks like the top of that course is extremely tricky.
It's a great course, Nathan, isn't it? Everything is going on. I mean, this is a real proving ground for any sailor. It's a fantastic course. You have loads of puffs and holes, but, you know, a great breeze. And when they get in a puff, the acceleration is unbelievable. I'm like hanging on the boat here. We're right beside the Americans now, and actually they look pretty good, and I know they're confident in the breeze. You know, especially in the lighter conditions, but in the breeze they are happy, and they're sailing like that right now.
See the radical turn by INEOS at the bottom of the screen right there through that jibe. That means it was unstable, and they're just making sure they have plenty of apparent wind coming out of the jibe so they don't splash down, because what we have seen through these practice sessions is the fact that when you splash down, it takes a long time to get back up again.
This isn't the bottom marker, this is the start mark, isn't it?
Yes, correct.
Just going to see if we get below this. Don't think we do.
That would be an easy one to do out here at these speeds, Nathan, wouldn't it? To mistake the starting gate for the leeward gate. So the starting gate is about 2-3 tenths of a mile. We have a problem on board INEOS, by the way.
So trouble for INEOS Team UK on the downward leg.
Some sort of foil problem, no question about it. This is what they warned us before the race started that may happen, and it has happened. They have either a hydraulic or a mechanical foil issue, no question about it.
Yeah, I think Shirley picked that up earlier. Shirley, it was something to do with the foil cant system, wasn't it?
Yeah, we had a message with just minutes to go to the start that they wouldn't be starting, that they had a problem with the foil can system, and that was all we heard. And then about 1 minute 30 to go, they're like, right, we're joining in. But you know, in these kind of boats, Nathan, you know, it doesn't really roll like that, is it? You can't just attach a shackle and off you go. It's complex, both mechanically, hydraulically, and also, you know, software as well. It's a whole hybrid of very clever, state-of-the-art engineering, and for sure, I think it was a tough act to be able to pull the pin and start that race.
Patriot has rounded the bottom gate and will start the second lap. So they have completed 1 lap of 3.
I will.
Okay, here's a replay. Here's the problem. Something mechanical.
Just completely locked out here. So the rudder just sort of lost grip in the middle of that drive. Hang on. I will.
Ken, I think you saw it in the overhead jibe initially. I could see a lot of white water coming off the rudder. I think what Ben Ainsley was saying there is I just completely lost grip. You know, if you get too high in the middle of these jibes, you can get very little rudder in the water. When you got very little rudder in the water, it's very easy for air to start sucking down the foil and you actually lose complete steerage. And it looked like to me there they got through the jibe, that lifted the foil, but it still hadn't gripped yet. With only 1 rudder in the water, these boats are really difficult to sail. You know, when we were foiling in Bermuda on the catamarans, at least you had 1 rudder in the water at all times. Whereas a little bit of heel, and it can take your rudder out of the water, so not an easy boat to sail.
So why do you think, why do you think they just stopped for a minute?
Well, I think when you lose your steerage, the boat is so big, it's so heavy, that it then started to lay over, it started to broach. They can't let the sails out enough, and they literally had to wait for the boat to turn head to wing. You see them drop both foils down, put them down like a keel, stop the boat tipping over, and then you have to start all over again, foil up, rebuild, and get back into the race.
Have we seen the perfect example of how these are being raced on the edge?
Oh, I think inherently the definition of these boats is racing on the edge. There's no question about that. And that grip, like Nathan said, at least there were multiple rudders in the water on the catamarans of past America's Cups. Here they got 1, and it's a skinny one, boy. It is tiny.
And it's tiny because it's drag. You know, the only reason to have the rudder is to steer the boat, and the faster you go, the less rudder you need. But every now and then, if you don't have much of it in the water, it is quite tough. But let's not forget that they probably have some form of issue going on that boat still. They're incredibly complicated boats, and if you've got an issue and you're trying to race around it, it's frustrating.
Yeah.
INEOS Team UK finally completing lap number 1 as they go into the bottom gate for the first time after a splashdown, little mechanical issue, little rudder issue, but they are back and flying, and that will be the most encouraging thing.
Here we go. Go to boundary, 30 seconds. Go.
So we're turning right.
So we have just been informed that it was a steering cable issue.
There we go. That'll do it. From any boat on in the world, you don't have to be going 45 knots to have a steering cable issue and have it ruin
You don't know what you're going to get up at the top left, make that leg short.
So Ken, we obviously have no idea how any of these boats function inside. But to have a steering cable issue, in my experience, it must have jumped a sheave or something like that to get it back together. So maybe they're able to quickly repair that and get back on with it. But if you have a steering cable issue, would you keep racing? Would you keep sailing?
Could be it could be something as simple as a lashing. You know, you tension the cable typically separately, so it could be something just as simple as that. You never know. I lost a mast in the Around the World race on a $22 fitting. You know, so you just never know. It's the simplest things in the world.
Who didn't tighten something?
Standing by?
Yeah. Well. And remember, this is the first race day, technically, that these guys have had, so they'll all have complete protocols as to how their day works, from the minute they get out of bed to the minute they go to bed. So, you know, they're all working on that, too. Yes, this is the America's Cup World Series, but this is also practice for all of these boats.
That was a nice-looking tack by American Magic, you know, gliding through, transferring the load from one floor to the other, and super smooth. It's starting to look even windier out there now. You can see a lot of white caps developing, particularly on the right-hand side of the race course.
So Shirley, is that a current issue out there right now, or is it actually wind strength coming up?
We will, but
Well, Ken, it could be a bit of both. It's low tide right now, and the tide changes first at North Head on the right-hand side of the course. So we could get a bit of a current pushing them up, creating a bit more waves. We're right behind the Americans now. Just had a massive lull, massive holes in the breeze there.
Looks like a big right shift out there as well.
2, 1, bow coming down.
Rounding the top gate for the second time. They take their left-hand marker. It's a nice and tidy, although a lot of splash coming off that foil. And I've got to ask you about this, because I know this is one of your favourite things to talk about. Aero. Splash off the foils. Lots of splash, no dash.
Yeah, too much spray, too much foiling oil, too much drag. To me, it looked like it was light, as Shirley said, as they approached. As they were veering away, pressure increase, too much leeward heel, foil goes in the water, spray goes everywhere. It's not the end of the world, just a little bit more drag, and instead of accelerating out of that bear away, they have a little bit too much heel. So everyone out there is always trying to do better, and for sure they'll look back at that bear and say, you know, if we had to just ease the sails a little bit more, but would have accelerated nicely. But
a bit like a momentary slip off the foot on the accelerator.
Yeah, at least they didn't fall onto the brake or the clutch when they came off the accelerator.
A little bit of holding on for dear life, and no harm, no foul. Here we go.
Dean Barker standing at the back of the main building, crossing over on the port side of Patriot. I was standing there for a moment saying, just checking things out, we're okay.
Well, what he was actually doing was he was checking INEOS, who was sailing upwind. You know, he was holding onto those handles on the end of the boom. Remember, the guys who are driving on the windward side of the boat, in that case it was Paul Goodison driving on the exit of the manoeuvre, he can't see what's happening to leeward. You know, they're all about aerodynamics. They're all about trying to get low. So Dean just wanted to stay there for a bit, let him know that INEOS hadn't tacked, there's not going to be a problem, and then they do the handover.
Good angle.
That lighthouse is actually in the race course right now. I'm guessing that would be a very bad place to go.
That's Bean Rock.
Okay, the Bean Rock Lighthouse.
One of the only remaining examples of a cottage-style lighthouse built in 1870.
Thank God you're here. Thank God.
Oh, I can tell you one thing, guys. You would not want to be hitting that rock.
No.
I bet you there's plenty of sailors in Auckland who have accidentally touched that before, but hitting it at 40 knots, not going to end well, is it?
That big sound is the hydraulics moving, right? It sounds like they have a cow stashed on board or something. This is the hydraulic systems pumping oil and moving those massive wings around. But you're right, look at how that wheel is literally vibrating in his hand, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. It's 191.
Yeah, it's moving around a lot there. One thing I've noticed, you know, with the great shots we have on board from the stern, Ken, you can see the traveller, the boom, it's connected to the traveller which slides, you know, across the boat. You can see it just moving in small increments. They're playing that a lot on this boat. They're going up and down, trimming that traveller, but I don't see much main sail trim. I'm not seeing the sail get let on and off. It's just barn dooring, as we call it, as opposed to adjusting the twist.
Big light air area that they're sailing through. When you see that kind of shiny water, that just means that there's not a puff. See the dark spots in the upper right-hand corner, especially up there. I got to get quicker at this thing. The dark spots are where you want to be, and sometimes in these narrow race courses, you just absolutely can't get there. Because you'd be out of bounds.
Setting up the left gate again.
Copy.
Standing by, buddy.
3, 2, 1.
INEOS Team UK rounding the top mark and well behind American Magic.
Yeah, copy. Okay, hold the angle. Decency rescue.
Not having a great day today, though. You can hear the frustration in Ben's voice.
My pitch. Yeah.
American Magic now rounding
into a
the
jibe.
bottom gate for the second time to start the final lap of 3.
Okay.
3 times up and down. 6 legs of this race course, this stadium course. It faces back towards Auckland City. Spectators in the viaduct in the America's Cup Village and higher top Momoika, North Head. Just a beautiful day to watch sailboat racing of a different sort, different era, new class, AC 75s.
We're going to try to go back, Stephen, and take a look at that last mark rounding by INEOS again. It looked like they lost it again, Nathan. It looked like they might have had that same problem. And I just want to reiterate, we knew that they had a mechanical issue before they started this race. And all of this could be stemmed around that problem. We don't know, and by the way, we'll never know because they're not going to tell us.
You never know what they're going to tell us, Ken, do you? But
not much. Ask Shirley. She has to talk to these guys all the time. A frustrated Ben Ainsley is my guess.
20 seconds here. Copy.
that's 20 seconds to another jibe. Let's see if we can follow this through the whole jibe and see what's going on board and what kind of frustrations they're dealing with.
Okay, stand by. Yeah, yours. 2, on board down. Turning. Keep it coming. Tight on exit here. Keep it coming. Keep it coming. Keep it coming. Okay, get there. Right wheel. Okay, hold there for a bit, Charles. Yeah. 30s.
That looked pretty good to me. I mean, there wasn't much in that.
Yep. Staying light here.
What it does show is that there's a lot of people involved in making these boats manoeuvre correctly. You know, you had Leonard Munn there running around the back of the mainsail before that jibe, so he's in the right position to trim the main on the exit. You had Giles Scott sitting to leeward throughout that turn, driving on the exit while Ben Ainsley crosses the boat. Meanwhile, you have Luke Parkinson and Lee McMillan flying the boat. It's a big team effort, these boats, that's for sure. But as you said, that manoeuvre looked just fine from on board.
Yeah. It looks timid. It looks like they're still learning, though. I have to admit, like you know, the Kiwis just and Luna Rosa and in fact the Americans just kind of throwing it. You know, they're just throwing it and letting it go, and they look a little more. I don't know what the word is. Maybe on edge going in. Well, I guess when you do 2 massive wipeouts for some reason,
you lose your confidence very quickly, don't you? You know,
fair enough.
Your point's really valid. 3 teams are looking pretty slick and smooth and have confidence in their boat, but when your boat bucks you around a bit, you lose confidence in the equipment you're using. So then you are a bit more timid. You know, I've been there several times in training sessions and races where you're either on the money and the boat's doing exactly what it wants for you, and then every now and then it does something a bit random and odd, and so you have to throttle back, and the last thing you can do on a boat like this is throttle back.
Showing 1 and then left again.
You mean hitting the water, going 40 knots randomly?
Yeah,
freaks you out a little bit?
That's not much fun at all. Hey, Shirley, we'll cross to you on the water. How slick does the American Magic boat look there, and what can you see? You know, your eyes on the water. Give us some insight.
I'm not sure about insight, Nathan, but we're glued to them. We're right beside them. It's interesting what you say. I mean, it might be slightly untidy at the corners and manoeuvring, but in a straight line, they look really quite fast. They're sailing it aggressively. It's heeled over to windward. There's only a couple of centimetres between the bottom of the hull and the water, which is exactly what you want. You're trying to close that gap to increase the end placing effect. I mean, and the bow down, which we want as well, you know, less rudder in the water. I mean, they look fast and they look solid. I know they're not racing really anyone at the moment, but in a straight line, I think they're good.
Pushing a bit. Yep. My pitch. Yep. 20 seconds.
This is a drone shot of INEOS rounding that leeward gate.
Soften hatch at 3. 10 seconds to attack.
Their speeds aren't crazy slow. You know, it's
downwind. They were pushing 42 knots.
2, 1 down.
Yeah. Watch this maneuver and see a hint of any problem.
My wheel. My roll. Yours.
It looks kind of like attack to me, right? Not much in it.
American Magic approaching the top gate for the last time. Then they will head downwind to the finish. They are in complete control of the second race of the America's Cup World Series. Patriot doing the job on Britannia at the moment.
Goodness gracious, that was the G-force, and you could see the puff. They had just entered a puff, just smoking around that mark. You get numb to it, right, Nathan? It's just another day on the water.
You do if you do enough days of it, that's for sure. But if it's still a bit brand new to you, it stands the hairs up on the back of your neck every time you get to that top mark.
Interesting to note that Shirley Robertson, our eyes on the water, talking about how quick American Magic looks. Remember, we were fortunate enough to see them race Emirates Team New Zealand in one of the earlier practice races before this America's Cup World Series. They were behind 3-4 seconds. And it was one jibe at the bottom mark that sorted them out, and they won by 10 seconds. What does that tell us? Does that give us any indication as to where they're at?
Yeah, no question at all that they're fast. You know, we know they're going quick through the water. And from what we've seen in this race, their maneuvers are slick as well. I think what it really is telling us is that later on today, we're going to see these guys come up against another team, and we're going to really see where they fit against Luna Rossa and Team New Zealand. But everything that we're seeing right now, they're ripping out there, and it's going to be a real boat race coming up.
Race 4 will be American Magic versus Emirates Team New Zealand. The question we have to ask, though, with what has gone on with INEOS Team UK, they are supposed to back up for race number 3.
Well, we'll find out. That's a very good point. We're going to find out how mechanically or physically, what kind of shape they're in as soon as we finish, just by the fact of whether they come back out on the race course or not.
I would love to know why the grinders on INEOS Team UK are sideways and not pointing towards the bow of the boat as the two boats cross.
Not just sideways, but Nathan, looked like they were in the gym. They had like the local Sky Sports on their little screen in front of them, and they were just kind of sitting there working away in the gym.
I bet you they're not watching any other sporting competition right now. They'll be looking at numbers, hydraulic pressures. The other thing you can see is that those guys have individual grinding pedestals, whereas all the other teams who face forward and aft, they're sharing. So you have a teammate, you're working with your grinding side by side, but you've only got 4 sets of handles on board. So you might be putting double the amount of power through that shaft to power that hydraulic function. Whereas INEOS Team UK could be separating the way that they power the systems. There's a lot of complicated systems on board these boats, and the grinders are the ones driving the whole thing.
Feel like we may struggle to make it.
So, Shirley Robertson on the water, what do you make of this so far, particularly the pace of American Magic?
Well, Stephen, it's hard to keep up in the camera boat. They're definitely quick. Just to add to that grinding conversation, I know for the British, they wanted to free up Giles Scott, the tactician, so he didn't have to grind. So a massive emphasis on making that really, really efficient. I think that was definitely the thinking behind that. We're right beside the Americans, and as I said before, in a straight line, they look hot. They got a way to go turning the corners, but they're sailing well in the breeze, definitely.
To use your words, Shirley, today American Magic have won the street fight against INEOS Team UK in a classic battle of the original contenders for the America's Cup. American Magic crossing the line in race 2 of the America's Cup World Series, and it's a strong performance from Patriot.
Just turn up here. Yep. Turn it up.
Very, very strong performance. Again, kind of like we saw in the first race, reasonably flawless. It wasn't, I'm sure these guys are going to get into the room tonight and their coaching staff and all their numbers, and they're going to pick up this thing apart, and for all we know, they're going to think we sailed terribly. But from the outside looking in, these guys look like a pretty slick effort right now.
Does he have to find me 2 curries as soon as it was?
And just like that, it settles down.
We need to try to
settles
and
nestles
and they start breathing again.
Exactly.
We lived. We made it.
And the grinders are just saying, get the chase boat over here with a few drinks so we can rehydrate and cool ourselves down. I remember those days. It was a fantastic feeling when you cross the finishing line, particularly after a nice win like this where you can breathe a sigh of relief. We've got a monkey off the back. We've got the first win on the board, and you shift focus now to what you need to do in the up-and-coming race.
Did I hear you say you were a grinder?
I was never a grinder.
No, you don't have the physical prowess to be a grinder.
I used one once in the gym. I tried once in the gym to grind.
I think he just insulted you. I'm just going to say.
No, not at all. Not insulting my fellow commentators at all. We were able to do 10 press-ups before the start of the day.
You guys took it on. 10 push-ups. Nice.
Well, I did 20. I hadn't told them I'd done 10 before. As we look at INEOS Team UK, who are still making their way around this course, they are well behind American Magic, who have completed the second race.
Real funky here.
But there would be, look, you know, despite what's going on here, Kenny, you've got to say this is still encouraging signs. They have bounced back, regardless of the distance. You know, as we say in the old adage of the America's Cup, there is no second, but they are still sailing, and this is certainly, you can take positives out of this, bouncing back.
We have, you're right, we have no idea where they are on their learning curve, on their path curve. For all we know, again, that they have big breakthroughs sitting in the closet that haven't come out yet, or still being constructed. We're just not going to know for a while. This is a great first step, especially for Patriot. But you know, these guys have had their issues, no question, well documented in the practice racing. And you know, let's take little victories. Got around the race course. Let's figure out why we had a couple bad jives. And this mechanical problem, for all we know, it's a real, you know, it's a big one, and they're actually doing a miraculous job to get around the race course.
Stand by.
Yeah, it's one thing interesting I heard Shirley saying earlier, you know, how Giles is a tactician. They wanted to free him up to be able to give more input. But I'm a little unsure about that, because he's on the leeward hull the whole time. As a tactician, it's really difficult. On the leeward side of the boat, it's really hard to be calling the breeze and assisting. Obviously, you need someone to leeward with eyes out of the boat helping there. But the one thing that I haven't heard much coming off this boat, and I know we're talking over them constantly, is, you know, who's calling the wind, who's really helping Ben drive this boat accurately. And I might just close my mouth briefly here and listen coming to the finishing line.
One and into the finish. Okay, gust in 2 and then slightly soft patch.
It's technically a really quiet boat, especially when you're laying out trying to listen to them. That's when they get the quietest, Nathan. You're gonna find that us veterans in the booth will let you know. That's when they go quiet, is when you're trying to listen.
And then when you want to say something, they start talking.
Of course. Yeah.
It's because we can hear you while we're racing too.
Exactly.
We'll go at least another 10 seconds here.
Yes, we do have another beautiful day here in Auckland, and coming up to the finish line, INEOS Team UK.
Here is the America's Cup village, bathing in sunshine. I hope they've all slipped, slopped and slapped, as we say here. Smiles abound around this America's Cup village, because finally we have racing of these magnificent, they are magnificent, AC75 foiling monohulls. Who would have thought? Well, they did think. Challenger of record, and also defender Emirates Team New Zealand, as Ben Ainsley and INEOS Team UK finally make it to the finish in race 2 of this America's Cup World Series. They had a gear issue with their rudder early on in the piece, but they have mounted the challenge again and are back. And in this game, you've got to get up and you've got to come back. And they finish well behind Patriot of the New York Yacht Club. Confirmation then of race number 2 on this Thursday, the 17th of December. They're calling a DNF on INEOS Team UK, but a clear win and a point to American Magic. A point to American Magic. Remember, after 3 days of racing, they'll all be seated. You get a point for a win, and that's the key here.
Well, here we came into the start. We actually caught up with this start a little bit late from a television perspective, but it was a pretty darn even start. But you saw a speed difference right off the line. Little higher, little faster by the New York Yacht Club boat. And sure enough, up leg one, there was quite a spread happening in a very short period of time. Again, we don't want to keep repeating ourselves, but we will. We know that INEOS Team UK had a mechanical problem before the race, and we're very lucky to even make the race start. So good for them for not using it as an excuse and getting out there and practicing around the racetrack. But wow, these guys had pace, and they were smooth, and the G-forces, it looked like a Formula One car, Nathan, going around those corners.
Yeah, I've sailed high-performance boats a lot of my time, and I'm sorry, I'm just looking at the jibe here that ended up in disaster with the rudder fully letting go. It's never fun getting a full washdown like that, and
then trying to keep the boat upright.
They're trying to stop it going over. The thing is these boats have stability and balance at speed, but as soon as you slow down, the foils have some weight in them to stop them tipping over, but they're incredibly hard to get upright and to build speed from this. You see the foil now arm lifts up, and it's a long build from there.
Coming into the finish line, it was American Magic with an easy win. Listen, they're going to be really happy with this, but these are veterans, these are pros. These guys have been doing this for a long time, and they'll be back to the drawing board tonight and trying to improve off of what we considered was actually a great performance.
And just reconfirming that result, American Magic gets the number, and it's a flat 5-minute win over INEOS Team UK. 5 minutes over INEOS Team UK. The battle is well and truly on.